Hello, everybody. Welcome to our chill studio hangout. Welcome to Art Prof. We are a global art party. Jordan and I will be working during the session, but a reminder to everybody that we also have the Discord. So if you'd like to post your work, you can come into the Art Alongs channel. And this is where, we already have a lot of activity here. We have Lisa, who is going to listen while drawing at a gallery, and Nez has got a studio snack ready and also a painting in progress as well. So I hope all of you will come into the Discord, share your stuff. I will be also posting updates, more clear-cut photos that you can all see as we progress. And we're going to go for about, well, I'm not going to tell you. You're going to have to just wait and see how long things go. All right, let's see what people are up to and tell us in the chat. What have you been doing this week? Because you don't need to make art to be exercising your creative mind. Jordan, I'm wondering, what are some of the things you do that are not the making of the art?
I mean, reading books about art is always interesting for me. I have a whole bunch of stuff that I've been wanting to read. I know it sounds a little nerdy, but that's okay. But then there's also, just absorbing different media. So whether it's movies or shows or games, like I just watched a Let's Play of the new Indiana Jones game, and that was pretty cool. That was really exciting. I don't have a PlayStation, so there's nothing, there's nothing I can do. I can't, yeah, but I had to watch someone enjoy it, and it seemed like it was a fun game. It looked like it was fun.
I mean, I can tell you that most of the time I'm not making art. I got my hands full here, but I can't work all day every day. You know how people talk about how, it'd be amazing if I just had 8 hours every day to be in the studio. I'm like, dude, I would die if I was in the studio that much by myself.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. I think it can become, it could be a lot of pressure. So yeah, it is what it is.
Neil is asking, is that Shadow Boxer's concept art? Tell us what you are working on, Jordan.
Yeah, so Neil, you're absolutely correct. It is Shadowboxer's concept art, and this idea that I had, it started off as like a quick thumbnail sketch. I don't even know when I did this. I did this on one of my live streams on my YouTube, and it's basically, the idea of it is basically this deep dark cave where there's a door that's kind of separating worlds, and there's some of the founders of this ancient society. So I wanted to do something like that. And obviously this one figure is bigger than the rest of them. He's more important to the story. So yeah, I wanted to create some concept art based on this sketch and just see how it turns out. And I've been doing it off and on for, I don't even know how many months now. So I figured this would be a good thing to do for the stream.
Well, I think what we find is that we're not working in an inspired manner the whole time. And I do think that a lot of making art is just being here. We don't have dramatic moments every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Have you found that for digital? Do you have to do that too?
I mean, it's not even just digital, it's just art in general. I mean, to expect that you're always going to be inspired is kind of wild. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, art making can very easily turn into just a job, just like anything else. Like if you look at old Disney animators, they just treat it as a job. It wasn't like some magical thing for them. It was just, it is. So right. Sometimes that happens. And that's how it is for me at the moment. But, I still enjoy what I do. Don't get me wrong. But that is an aspect of how things are created here.
Well, Butter says, I don't know about y'all, but I so need this break today. Well, I'm so glad. And remember, everybody, you don't have to work during these art alongs. You can just chill out and have a muffin and some coffee, that's totally fine because I find the listening to be very stimulating.
Yeah, listening is kind of nice sometimes. I actually understand that very, very well.
So Nani says, I just graduated. I really don't want to get a job. I want to give courses as well via the internet because the payment here is horrible. I'm from Mexico. Well, Nani, I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe you can ask us some questions because we know a little bit about teaching online.
One or two things only.
Just a few. And Neil says, are you on Photoshop? I miss Photoshop. Laptop is broken.
Yes, I'm working in Photoshop right now. I could probably have done this in Clip Studio or Procreate as well. It's just this happens to be where I saved the file. So, yeah. So we're working in Photoshop today.
We also have Tolly working on research on villages and chiefdoms for a comic project. That sounds really fascinating. I don't know anything about any of that history.
Ooh.
All right, we got a question from Neil. How do you decide if you want to turn art into a job? I'm afraid that if I do so, it will lose the fun and magic of art.
Oh, geez. Do you want to answer that first, or am I answering it first?
No, you answer that first.
How do you decide? Well, the way I decided was I just knew that if I tried to do anything else, I would probably regret it. So I think that was the biggest thing for me. For some other people, there's a lot of pressure to try and make money from what they do as an artist. If there's a layoff, or if someone doesn't like your work, or if someone doesn't purchase your work, that could add some pressure. And if that's going to destroy you artistically, it might be better to not do it. But as far as the fun and magic, that's more about mindset. At the end of the day, like if you're able to have fun despite the fact that you may not be able to pay all the bills, I mean, hey, go for it. Usually most artists I know have some form of backup, meaning like teaching. Like for me, teaching is a form of a backup, even though it's related. YouTube or doing some other things like that could also help. So you can do things that are art related that aren't necessarily drawing all day. So that's how I would think about making my decision for that.
I think it's a lifestyle choice, Neil. I don't think it has anything to do with how good of an artist you are or ambition or anything like that. Because I have friends who are super burnt out from having an art job. And I have some friends who really like it and don't want to do personal work, actually. One of my colleagues said that when he was a waiter, he got so much painting done. And I'm not surprised because an art job drains you not just time-wise, but also mindset-wise. Have you found that, Jordan?
Oh yeah, I mean, when I was working my last job, it was draining creatively. I would get so frustrated during the day that I wouldn't even have time to like think about doing my own stuff because I was just trying to unwind. So that can cause a lot of stress too, because when you're expected to perform at a high level all the time, regardless of how things are going in life, regardless of if you've had a bad morning or if whatever, you're just expected to perform, and that's with any industry or any job. But because artists are so creative, that can become a burden. So if you're not able to balance that, then that might be something to consider as well for when you're considering pursuing the artistic path.
Oh, of course, I don't have my supplies. This is the story of these art alongs. Clara can't find her supplies, and I knock things over. I already did it. If you go to the Discord, you can see I knocked everything over 5 minutes before we started.
Oh my gosh.
Brazen says, even when I was doing digital editing for a book bindery, I really enjoyed being able to get paid for playing with Photoshop all day. Certainly, that can absolutely be the case. I have to go get some water. So Jordan, maybe you can explain this. Nani says, how do you organize your courses? Should I show my face more in social media? Upload some reels. Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay, so I can only speak for how I organize courses because I teach at a college, and they have a syllabus set up, but it's very simple. It's like they give a 1-sentence brief, and then I have to come up with the rest. So I kind of think of it like a story, and I think about who my audience is, right? If my audience is complete beginners who never picked up a pencil, then I have to approach it from that lens. I have to think about, okay, why would I talk about the complexities of mixing color or paint when they don't even know how to hold a pencil properly? So that's an example of how I would start it. I would just go like, what are the basics? And then how do we get more advanced from there? As far as showing your face on social media, I've seen it done both ways. If usually people either show their face or they'll have some sort of avatar, like a little drawing of them, like a little character. And that also works. I've seen it on several channels, and it seems to work just fine. But I don't think you want to just have it be blank art advice in the ether, in a random voice kind of speaking.
My point of view, as far as seeing faces for teaching, I think is extremely important. So I'm going to disagree, Jordan.
I didn't say no. I just said it. I've seen it done.
Oh, you said you see it. Okay.
Yeah, I said that.
Sorry, I missed it.
Dang.
Sorry.
Goodness.
I feel a little discombobulated this morning. Oh my God. Well, getting back to it, since Jordan is done being sassy, the thing about teaching that I think is extremely important is people have to feel like they trust you. And for them to trust you, they have to see your face. Because my example is that there was one time I was going to sign my kid up for a comics class. And there were 2 teachers, and I didn't know either one. So I thought, all right, I'll look them up and see what their deal is. And I look up one guy, could not find a single photo. The other person has like a nice photo of themselves on their website. I mean, which teacher do you think we picked?
Makes sense.
But in terms of how to structure the courses, I think it can happen in so many ways, and we have tried many different things. The thing I will say is when people teach online, I do think it's easier for people to learn in shorter bits, because we did try at one point doing some long-term classes where the class was, say, 6 weeks and people would come once a week or something like that. But that actually didn't do very well because most people who are learning on their own can't commit to, oh my God, please. No, my painting. I'm such a mess, Jordan.
What happened? I just heard
my panel just went, like I thought it was going to fall over. Anyway, the point is you have to try a lot of things until something sticks. And then the other thing too is if you want to teach online, you have to be extremely willing to do a lot of tech support for people. Because when you teach online, people have to know how to join the Discord or how to tag people. And that's a big part of online teaching that I didn't anticipate, which is sort of dumb, but it makes sense now.
I just thought about something about the teaching the avatar thing. I'm realizing most of the time when I see people just use avatars, it's for short form content. So I think that's where it was, because there's this, I forget the name of the page, but he does like these 1-minute perspective videos on Instagram, and they're really popular, but you never see his face. So that would be different than like a full on 8-hour course, like on what's what's that website that has all the courses that everyone advertises on YouTube?
Domestika?
Not Domestika, but that is one. It starts with an S.
Skillshare?
Skillshare. Yes, thank you. It's like I know it. I know this, but it's slipping my mind. Yeah, Skillshare. Like if you're doing a Skillshare, yeah, definitely show your face for sure.
You know something? We used to do some sponsorships for Skillshare, and they would always have me watch a class to talk about and make an ad about it. And I watched this one course with Roxane Gay, who I love. She's a writer, writes for the New York Times, and has also written some books. And I found it incredibly impersonal because there was no interaction with her. And also, I felt like I might as well just be watching something on YouTube. Like it didn't feel like I got anything that benefited me from a student, from a learning point of view.
I've never gotten a Skillshare course, so I've never been able to afford one with everything else I got. But that's unfortunate.
Well, everybody in the chat, tell us if you have taken an online course somewhere. What did you like about it? And what did you find lacking? So hello, everybody. We've got Sammy here. Andrew just joined. Nail the Fashion says, hi, I'm just over here painting pins with nail polish. Fantastic. Well, any of you who are in the Discord, I highly recommend that you come hang out here and post your stuff. For example, here, I have posted some images of the palette that I'm using today. You can also see my palette here. So there's a lot to glean from the Discord. We are right now in the Art Alongs channel that is underneath the live streams category. So anybody who wants to hang out here, we are happy to post your work so everybody can see what you are working on. Yes, I do need some chamomile tea. I know. I was just telling Jordan, I woke up this morning and I was like, oh, I have all this time. And of course I didn't.
It ran into some tech issues. Mostly my fault, admittedly.
Yeah, but it was your fault because Jordan's like, okay,
I just said it was mostly my fault. I own it. I was okay. I'll tell you guys the issue. So for a few minutes, I couldn't hear Clara just as we were about to jump on, and then she called me and we tried to work it out. And she's like, StreamYard's working just fine. And I realized I muted my computer by accident. So I own that. I own that that silliness. Yeah.
For once, it was not me. I was very proud of that moment. You know something? There's crap on my painting. There's dust. And it's making these little pills. I wonder, maybe I should just take a rag and clean it. Has anybody here had that before? I'm using water mixable oils. So Tolly's asking, would the show and tell channel on the Art Prof Discord be good for sharing my comics world and art related to my fictional universe if anyone's interested? Yes. The show and tell channel, in case people don't know what we're talking about, is under community. And if you look here, this is a channel called Show and Tell. And you can see a lot of people posting the stuff they are working on. It's a really nice, low-key place to share your work because there's no critique involved. People are just sharing. Here's Leston. We also have Mahata sharing their work. It's a great place. The thing I would keep in mind, though, is that each channel does have some guidelines. So, for example, in this channel, we limit everybody to one photo per day, one original artwork at a time. So if you're going to post in this channel, don't come in and post 3 images because we limit things for a reason. Otherwise, the channel becomes this giant dump. But yeah, that would be an excellent place for you to share your work, Tolly. We also have... Oh, Nani has already tried to teach. Got afraid because my thesis advisor told me some awful stuff about my social media. What?
What did they say?
Not cool. I mean, Jordan, it makes me upset when people are so unsupportive.
Yeah, I think especially as artists, we tend to be very sensitive about our work. And I mean, there's nothing we could do about other people who say bad stuff about us, but I would just caution everyone to be very, very careful about how you word things. Because I've learned over my time in school and also teaching, there's many ways to say the same thing. And most of us tend to use the most discouraging way to say it, to say the same sentence. And that could really crush somebody, you know, like instead of saying something like, "Oh, you suck at this," which someone told me I sucked at this particular aspect, you could say, "You know what? This area could use some work." Like I said the same thing virtually, but just the intention behind it or the meaning behind it changes. So yeah, be very, very careful how you treat people when it comes to that sort of thing.
Tell us in the chat, has anybody here had anyone in their life, not just teachers, say something that made you feel really discouraged? Because I just think that's the worst thing possible. And I don't think that I'm somebody who is, I'm sure I've done that in the past. You kind of can't avoid it when you're teaching, but it's really hard because that is somebody, Nani, who is not into your best interest. They're just trying to put you down, and that is bad advice. What would be better is for your advisor to tell you what to improve. That would be better. I mean, who has an amazing social media site when they first start? Nobody.
Yeah, it's really messed up. I've had employers who were like that, who were super discouraging too. So keep your head up as much as you can. It is rough out there. And when you can avoid them, avoid those people.
We do have a question from Amaris. How do you keep pushing yourself to complete what you've started?
The only way I could describe it for me is there is a internal burning sensation to complete something. Like it's like that one task that always eggs at you, no matter what. Like for some people, it's like chores, right? Like they'll do everything except for that one chore in their house, and that's kind of the feeling I get here. Not that it's a chore to work on my projects, especially like shadow boxes. I actually enjoy it, but it's like a constant thing. Like, did you work on it? Did you work on it? You got to work on it. You got to do this. Got to do this. So I don't even know if it's so much motivation anymore. It's just like this nagging that I just need to get this done and out of my system.
I also have to point out, Amaris, you do not have to finish everything you make. In fact, for me, I think I only finish about 20% of what I make. I have so many pieces that are not meant to be finished. They're there for me to practice something or work something out, or maybe it's a study for a future piece. And I do think a lot of people feel pressure to finish things a lot. I mean, Jordan, out of everything you do, what percentage do you think you finish?
It's probably less than 20%, to be totally honest. Like most of my stuff is more abandoned. Like it's like when I do the 2500 and I draw the heads, like I could go further. I could easily make them hour-long drawings each, but I stop at like 8 to 10 minutes now. It's like I'd rather just move on. So this project is the one exception where like things become dragged out more than probably they need to, but it's mostly because I care. It's too much.
Of course. And by the way, everybody, you may be wondering, I did change my reference. So here are the thumbnails that I did a long ways back. And initially, the painting was upside down, but then I changed it to the other version. And then during the painting marathon, I decided to add some texture in the background. And now I can't find my slide. It's here.
Ooh.
I got it. It's here. I just didn't upload it. Oh my God. I'm such a mess. Okay, here we go. The reference photo on the left, that's where I was during the painting marathon. And the photo on the right, you can see I've dissolved the right thigh and also the foot at the very bottom because I'm not totally happy with this background. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here spatially, but I do think removing some of those areas shifts some of the emphasis to some other areas and makes it a little bit more balanced. I mean, I'll probably change my mind in about 5 minutes. Val says, how should I respond to people who make art? Oh, how do I respond to people who make fun of students who chose to enroll in an art major?
I've never actually heard that before. That's pretty messed up. I mean, people who enroll in art majors are taking a giant risk at the end of the day. And we're risking to pursue our dreams and our passions. I don't think anyone gets into art just going like, I'm going to make a ton of money. Like, that's why people become doctors sometimes or engineers. It's like, I know there's a lot of money in this. But with artists, it's kind of, it's a little risky at the end of the day. So I think that's actually more brave, to be honest with you. And I think it takes a lot more courage to try and pursue the artistic path than just go with something else that someone may make a lot of money in but may not enjoy or care about so much.
I also have to say that's extremely judgmental for somebody to do that. And it doesn't have anything to do with being an artist a lot of the time. It's just people being jerks. I mean, I think we're seeing from a lot of the comments today, there's a lot of really toxic people. And you have to find people like us who want to see you succeed. Jordan, why is that so hard to find for a lot of people?
I think a lot of the time it's just jealousy. I found that a lot more people are jealous than I really give credit to or credence to. Like, there's a lot of people who do things purely out of spite.
Like me?
Okay, I wasn't trying to talk about you. I mean, I think I'm not saying it can't be a motivational source by any means. And there have been times where I have been wrong, and I'm like, I'll show you. But for me personally, I have a hard time relying on that. And I'll use Avatar: Last Airbender as an example.
Really?
It'll work. Trust me, it'll work. So
really?
For those of you, yes, it will. Some of you guys know the show Avatar: Last Airbender. There's a character named Zuko, and this is a spoiler heavy thing I'm gonna say. Throughout the entire show, he's relying on his anger for firebending, right? But then there's a point where he changes internally, and he basically wants to do things that are morally right. But his firebending just dies on him. He can't figure it out. And it's not until he's able to sort of embrace this new side of himself and relearn what firebending means where he becomes even stronger. So that, for me, it is a solution that works. I know it probably sounds a little cheesy, a little corny, but it's something that that works for me. I would rather do something purely because I love it and enjoy it and want to succeed and excel. And when I'm in that kind of mind space, I tend to create better work. Just me personally.
I think it's hard to avoid toxic people. Some of them are just in your lives and you can't get rid of them.
Yeah, that's it. That's certainly true.
So I'm really sorry that you're dealing with that. But I can assure you, we are absolutely, everybody on our staff wants you to succeed. That's why you should come into the Discord, because this is where you will find people really supporting each other. We also have some stuff in here, the painting marathon. And just so people know, I know it's a little bit confusing but the art-alongs are for these one-off streams that me and Jordan are doing. The art marathons, we probably will do more of them in the future. So Andrew says, I've taken dozens of online courses. Like real life, some are great and some aren't. The best ones seem to be the ones that have done it a lot, who have worked out all of the bugs. Well, I may be a little biased, but we do have amazing workshops, in my opinion, that you can enroll in. Couple of the ones that are coming up soon would be flowers and plants and watercolor, and also pets and animals in color. But remember, we have many more. If you look at the video description below, you guys will be able to find that. Okay. Oh, and another reminder to everybody, it's really helpful for us if you can write question in caps. So that way it's easier for me to find that. We do have another question. Just need to find it.
That's always the dilemma, right?
Guys, I'm such a mess this morning. Okay, so Shannon says, I'm really struggling with creating anything without the pressure to make something I can sell. Any tips for getting past this and actually creating something? Love the colors of these pieces, by the way.
Without the pressure. I mean, if you just tell yourself it's, that you're not going to sell it, I imagine that you've probably tried that and it hasn't helped as much. I think it really comes down to something that's beyond art. I think it's more of a personal thing. For myself personally, I'll just speak about this. People pleasing is something that I am very used to, and I tend to create art with that in mind. And it takes a long time for me to get out of that mindset. And so what I try and repeat to myself is I don't have to do anything for anyone else but me. Sometimes I'll turn off the camera. I'll turn off, all outside influences. Sometimes I'll turn my phone off or put it on do not disturb or something, and I will just purely create. And I think a lot of the issue comes from, comparing yourself to other artists as well. And that, when we go like, oh, they're making all this money from selling their work, I need to do that too. It's not necessarily the case. Sometimes art is just meant to be enjoyed, So if you can get back to that place, I think that will help.
I will also add, it's not an art issue. It is absolutely a marketing issue. And I think a lot of people go into it thinking that, oh, if I just have amazing work, people will buy it because it's amazing. But that's actually not the reason why a lot of people buy work. There's usually some kind of personal connection to it somehow. For example, people here in Utah love the landscape. It's such a big part of the life here. So if I paint a mountain, it's like, oh yeah, that's a nice mountain. But if I paint Cottonwood Canyon here in Utah, there are people here who have a personal connection to Cottonwood Canyon and will buy it just because it's Cottonwood Canyon. Have to find your audience. Like, where do they hang out? Who are these people? I had a Chinese medicine doctor bought some of my prints of ginseng roots. I don't think he bought it because I have amazing intaglio printmaking technique, which I don't, by the way. Sonnet says, I had a friend tell me my abstract work looked like crap, but nothing really negative from a teacher. That's rough. That is not somebody you ever want to talk to again about your art. That's terrible.
Yeah, that brings up a good point. Whenever you come across those people who do nothing but discourage you despite their best efforts, I think it's best to just leave them out of the conversation when it comes to critique. Because like for me personally, I have a small elite team who I trust with talking about my work. And I know that technically everyone is probably trying to help me, but sometimes it's just the wording that they use that I can't embrace, and I get more discouraged than anything. So I'll rely on that small team. And anyone who ever breaks that barrier, that line, I'm like, I'm not going to come to you again until I am so confident already in this work that I know there's nothing bad you can say. I mean, you have to almost create these mind games in a sense to help you make it work.
And you know something, just because somebody's an artist friend doesn't mean that they're a good fit for giving you feedback. Because I have some artist friends who I just adore, but they don't really understand what I'm doing creatively, even though they're creative people. And it's hard to find people who, number one, you trust, who have your best interest and have the expertise. Those things are not something most people have in common. Lisa is asking, is the orange and blue your underpainting? The underpainting was actually all done in cadmium red. And the way I did it is I lifted the cadmium red when it was still wet to get those highlights. So that is not white paint. That is just me wiping away. And I really enjoy that technique because it creates a certain feeling of volume, which of course I am covering up right now, but you know, whatever. We also have BW says this art looks interesting. Wearing 3D glasses because of the blues and reds. Maybe I need to do that. Maybe my work will look better.
That would be so wild to paint with 3D glasses
Oh,
traditionally.
God.
Couldn't even imagine.
Got a lot of Avatar fans in here, Jordan.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you guys know Jordan talked about it so much that I watched it because I didn't understand anything he was saying about the show. Like, that's how much he talks about Avatar.
To be fair, I'm not the only one on the staff who likes Avatar. I think everyone else does too. I just do it the most often. I even got little posters on the wall of Avatar, and I got all the art books here. I got comics. It's great. It's great.
Lisa says, how often do your finished projects turn out pretty close to what you envisioned at the outset?
Maybe like 10% of the time, probably. I think most of the time I create art that is that leaves something to be desired. It's very rare. I'm just like, everything's perfect. It's just perfect. It's great. That happens very
Never.
infrequently. Yeah, very infrequently / never. But I think that's kind of the whole point. It's like, you know, like anyone who is a perfectionist always feels a burden. Like, for example, Michael Jackson has gone record saying that he is never fully satisfied with his work, despite the fact that he's like the greatest selling music artist of all time. He was like, it's not there yet. I'm like, dude, how much more could you want? You know, but I also kind of understand at the same time. So, yeah.
My answer to that is I don't envision it. I know that sounds weird, but I will go into something thinking, oh, I want this to evoke strong emotion, or I would like my color to improve here. But for me, if I set up those expectations, I find it extremely frustrating. And I do really like it when my artwork surprises me, when it comes out in a way that I never could have anticipated. And that also really helps because I think a lot of the times the reason why people get so frustrated is because they have such specific expectations about what they want it to look like that anything that steps outside of that just seems terrible.
Yeah, there's a balance. You know, you want to leave room for creativity, but you also don't want to be so shackled by even something as strong as powerful as the fundamentals, like you have to have both. So it's really, really important to find that balance.
And I do think one of the reasons people get frustrated just in general is that they have expectations. When you have expectations, inevitably, you're always going to be disappointed. I have goals, but I don't have expectations. Do you think you do or not, Jordan?
Oh, I always have expectations.
Oh,
Actually,
you do?
yeah. But what's interesting? I saw a YouTube comment on a random video today, and it was I'm not a Buddhist, but it was from a Buddhist quote, and it said something like, "The reason we're like we despair is because of our personal expectations," or something like that, or because we feel like we deserve something. And I thought that was really interesting because it's like all the times that I have been upset or irritated or frustrated at my work, it's always because I just expected more. But if you can let go for a little bit, you can create something that's beautiful. And that's a weird thought, I believe, for most of us. It's not an easy thing for me to think about, but I also do find it kind of true in its own way.
Ugh. I just tried Terra Verte, which is a green, but I've never used before. And I sort of hate it. I mean, it was just one brushstroke, but it looks a lot like raw umber. I was not expecting that to be it's doing exactly what I expect raw umber to do. Oh, that's really bizarre. Oh, maybe I should try sap green. Hang on, I'll be right back. Jordan, maybe you can answer the next question.
Okay. Let's see.
Brandon says, how do you deal with being unsatisfied with your progress? Recently, I realized I'm drawing at a level I wanted to reach, but am still not satisfied. How do you deal with never feeling enough?
Oh, geez. Okay. So one of those questions is like something you would have to answer through a couple of weeks of therapy, I think. But the question about being unsatisfied with progress, what I would do to fix that is the key is self-examination with anything in life. If you are struggling with something, I think the key to fixing it is looking at yourself and being honest. That's basically what critique is, except other people are doing it for you. When you can self-analyze and say, I am not good at this thing, how do I get better? Usually the secret to how to get better is improve your fundamentals. So color, perspective, anatomy, paint technique, etc. All those things are usually the trick, and just practicing that a lot, right? So that is usually the solution, and just practicing it so much that it becomes second nature. As far as how to deal with never feeling enough, that is a deeper issue than just art. That's more of a deep internal conflict that many of us face, including myself. And you just have to recognize that that's a lie. I mean, that's a lie that we tell ourselves because of life experiences at the end of the day. And it takes a lot to convince ourselves otherwise. But that, I think, tends to be the root of a lot of these issues.
Brandon, I think it's very similar to what we were just talking about in regards to expectations, because I don't think I'm ever satisfied. There's always something. I look at work that actually I really like a lot and I think I did well, but there's always something I can point out. And I think if you take away, actually, it's two things. If you take away the expectation of satisfaction, it's going to be a lot easier for you, because a lot of this is us creating situations for ourselves that just are frustrating no matter what. Now, if I go watch a Hugh Jackman movie, I expect to be satisfied, and I am. That is the only guarantee in my life in terms of satisfaction. Or Benedict Cumberbatch movie, like that type of thing. But I just don't think it's realistic. And so why aspire for something that pretty much most people almost never feel?
Something else too. Pretty much everything is imperfect. Like if you think about something like nature pretty much by definition just is what I think almost everyone can agree that it's just beautiful. Like you go outside and see this landscape of these mountains and trees and rocks and plants and all that stuff. People usually say, oh, this is beautiful. But if you look at it real close, there's imperfections in it. And so there is a beauty to that. Another way to think about it is one of my favorite movies, Spider-Verse, right? What? You just talk about Benedict Cumberbatch. I can use Spider-Verse.
Fine. One for one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess
but you talked about it twice, so I get to talk about Aaron Tveit.
Okay, you can do that for the next example. But part of the beauty in the film are the imperfections. They color outside the lines. There are things in there that just that just don't technically make a lot of sense, but it's still beautiful in its own way. And I don't know a single person who dislikes either of those movies. So I think that hopefully will be encouraging for you guys.
There is definitely, I think, a charm in things that don't have amazing technique. For example, I love that wonky stop motion animation that they did in previous decades. I mean, I'm sure people are doing it now still, but if I watch stop motion animation and the motion is like perfect, it loses its charm. Mm-hmm. So there's no such thing that, oh, it always has to be like this, otherwise it will never be successful. It's not true. I think people like those rough edges. Tell us in the chat, do you like seeing those quote flaws? Do you like seeing things that are rough around the edges? Because I certainly do. DJ Poopy says, I rarely have a complete idea of what I'm making beforehand. I usually just have an idea of a composition or character, and things just turn out into what they turn into. Fantastic. And let's look at what's in the Discord, because I believe I saw... Wonderful. Butter says, I'm a night owl, so hardly ever do art in the mornings. I'm struggling. Oh, wow. Look at that. Beautiful marks. And they're going in so many different directions. Look at that. Oh, so emotional, Butter. And I think these are pan pastels. Butter, I know you're in the chat if you want to confirm that, because it looks like that, but you didn't use it in that super, super smooth manner. I mean, this is very expressionistic. Great job. We also have Neil is asking about art history books to recommend. I'm guessing since you were not that into art history that you don't have recommendations.
No, art history is difficult for me to get into. If anything, I like the history of animation, so I'll watch YouTube videos on that, but I can't think of a specific channel. You just have to type in like history of Disney animation or whatever.
Yeah.
But you'll find the same videos that I come across. But yeah, Clara, that one's all you.
For me, Neil, I don't often check out art history books. If I go to the library, I want to check out the Michelangelo book that's like this big and 4 inches thick. That's usually what I'm looking at. But history of art, I think sometimes it's helpful to look at a time period, because when you get those generalized textbooks, they oftentimes just mention things really briefly. They never go into depth. And that's what I really miss. So certainly there's the classic, is it Jansen or Gardner? Jansen and Gardner are sort of the main general textbooks. But the other thing I really like to do is I'll just go to the library and I'll just sit and look at books. Like I'll just pull random ones off the shelf. So you don't necessarily have to get into it having a plan for what to look at. I mean, that's one of my favorite things to do, which I wish I had more time to do. Tolly's asking, if you can't make finished artwork, would working in your sketchbook make you productive in art making?
Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't. I mean, anytime you put pencil to paper or paintbrush to canvas, you're improving. even if it's just for a few minutes. So, yeah, I think there's definitely progress or production in that.
If you think about it in terms of athletics, does an athlete say, I went for a run this morning, that didn't count? Of course it did. That's part of the exercise. And your sketchbook, your doodles, whatever it is you're doing, it's not like you won an Olympic medal, but you did something. Everything matters. Everything you do as an artist, even the stuff that comes out really bad, is a benefit. So I don't ever believe that working on your art is ever a waste of time. Do you feel that way, Jordan, or not?
No, I don't think so. Especially if you're focused. There is a point where if you're just not intentionally working, that you probably won't improve that much. That's usually like if you're too focused on a YouTube video or watching a movie or something like that, that could happen. But if you're sitting there like, I'm going to get better at this, chances are you're going to get better at it.
Yeah. Takes time. And again, that's where managing your expectations. If you're like, oh, I need to be able to draw hands really easily by the end of the month, you're probably going to be disappointed. Very few people can do that. And I just think a lot of times with learning, people are very anxious to see progress. But a lot of the times that progress is extremely incremental. And it's not something that you can say, oh, by March 3rd, I'm going to have it. Never.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, art is about progress. Even the best artists that you can think of, they all feel like they're not where they could be. It's one of those scales that you can't ever reach the top of because it doesn't really exist. Like even Clara and I's methods of doing art are two totally different things. So it's hard to even say like my level of complete mastery is probably different from what hers looks like, and it's probably different from what Kat or Mia or Dorian or any of the other art prof crews looks like. And you multiply that by every artist that ever lived, including all the people on this chat and all that stuff. It's tough, So definitely want to have that range there.
We have a question from Boohoo who says, what do you think are the best job opportunities available for BFA graduates which provide money security?
That's kind of a tough question to answer without knowing the context of what the major is. Because I mean, I could say all this animation stuff, for example, and then you tell me you're a ceramics major, so then that wouldn't make any difference. If I was in school trying to look at how to find a job, I would try and find something that would not be as readily or easily affected by AI. So I think there's probably going to be a resurgence of people who actually can do things traditionally, as well as digital. But I do see that there's a shift happening. I also think it's a good idea for people to learn how to kind of manage things themselves and not have to rely on a specific art job at the end of the day. Because I'm not saying it's bad to get an art job, but you're at their mercy. Some people,
Yeah, you are.
Some people have a hard time working on other people's projects. Like myself, I have a hard time, I realize, working on other people's stuff and it not showing through. Like you can tell when someone's passionate about what they're doing versus when they're not. And, in a situation like that, it can be very, very tricky. So you kind of have to figure out what works best for yourself in that sense. I know that's probably not the most satisfying answer, but yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
My answer would be you have to be specific about what field you're talking about, because every field is, number one, always changing. I mean, animation is not what it was 20 years ago. It's a completely different type of industry.
Yeah.
There's that. The one thing I can confirm is that if you want stability, don't freelance. That's pretty much a no-brainer. But I also think you never know with stability. I mean, there's a lot of these tech companies. People are like, oh, yeah, I'm working at a big tech company. This is super reliable. But we've seen what's happened with the tech world is there's been layoffs, and animation is not in a very stable place right now and not going to change anytime soon.
You know, over the last year and change, maybe even since COVID, right? I have pretty much come to the conclusion that stability as far as jobs go doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. Yeah. You
Like
don't know.
yeah, like you could get laid off or fired, or you know, something could happen with a company merger and people lose jobs that way. Like there's so many things that happen and that are out of our control. Like you could be the best employee of all time, the boss could love you and you could have your name on a plaque on the wall, but at the end of the day, if they want to let you go, they'll let you go.
Yeah.
And you know, I hate to be morbid like that, but that's just the reality of any job. It's not just art. And you brought up the tech industry. I mean, it's a perfect example. I know a lot of people who were told, like, get into tech, get into programming, get into this and that. And then suddenly so many of them are out of work. So it's like, at the end of the day, you have to find something that you yourself can enjoy and live with. And, you know, I can recommend side hustles. Having multiple sources of income has worked well for me. I'm actually thankful for that, that I've had 2 or 3 things at the same time. But yeah, it's just 2025 is just how the world is at the moment, for better or worse.
I mean, I think that's where it's very helpful to be a more versatile artist, because let's say in the printmaking world, there's a lot of different techniques. Now, if you only know how to do silk screening, that's the only one you know how to do, your job opportunities are very limited. Now, let's say you know silk screening and you know intaglio. Teaching wise, that's double the classes you're eligible to teach. So while everybody pushes the, oh, specialize, there are a lot of circumstances where specializing can limit you in terms of your jobs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a such term in games as a generalist and a specialist. Specialists usually are very good at doing one thing. Generalists are usually decent at multiple things. And the more skills that you have, the better that your chances are of landing something.
Right. And that's another reason not to limit yourself, because Alex Rowe, who used to be a teaching artist here, he said one of the mistakes he made when he got into school is he decided, I'm going to illustrate adult book covers. That's it. And he said he wasn't willing to entertain other options. And he said that was a big limitation that he gave himself that he regretted later. Okay, we have another question coming up. Neil says, how are you liking Prussian Blue? Thinking of getting Prussian Blue and Cerulean Gouache, but I don't know if it's a waste since I already have Phthalo and Ultramarine. I don't think it's a waste. They're different colors. Prussian Blue is very different than Ultramarine. And it's valuable to learn different colors.
Something that my uncle taught me one time, I was yes, I'm bringing up Cora for my reference.
Oh God.
What? I need some painting reference. So something that he said was never skimp on your tools. Like if I was a barber, let's say, I would not go and buy the cheapest blades I could find. You know, you're gonna end up hurting somebody that way. Or if I was a chef, I would not go and just grab plastic forks and knives to make a 5-course meal. You have to have the right tools. And with color, it's like some colors just you don't want to take the time to mix that. I don't even know if some colors can be mixed.
Yeah,
you know?
You can't mix phthalo.
Yeah, like it's just like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. So, yeah.
Go for it. If you can afford it, why not? So Rowan says, I like seeing flaws. I like other people's art when it has a raw feeling somehow. It can even look unfinished. Oh, so Butter's not using pan pastel. I've been scraping willow charcoal into powder. That's really fun. I love the effects, Butter. Nice work. Oh, Good art history reference, Taschen's from Harry, or Thames and Hudson. Good point from Alexander. I like to get my history in little bites, one person or event being focused on. Yeah, I look at those textbooks and my brain wants to explode. Oh, I'm sorry, Harry, who says, I've had terrible news yesterday. This is calming. Well, I hope things settle down for you. Nail says, just shared in the Show and Tell channel. Oh, let's take a look in Show and Tell, which again is just where people... Okay. Oh, these are the pins. Oh my gosh. Hang on, let me share. Does everybody see? Those are super cute.
I
love that. I think they're bottle caps, right, Neil?
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a Bud Light one on the side.
Super cute. Cool. Val is asking, how should I deal with the anxiety that I don't work on my art enough?
I think anxiety tends to come from the fear of the unknown. And so what I might do to address that is plan for it. Don't make it an unknown. Have a specific time in the day where you're working on your art, even if it's just for 30 minutes. And I think that usually when we work on something, we get so into it that we want to work on it longer. That's just the pattern that I've seen with pretty much everything I've ever done. So if you schedule some time, set it aside and just be like, yeah, from 3:30 to 4, I'm working on art. That's just it. So that might help you.
I mean, nobody's ever working enough. Like, how many people here can say, oh, yes, I'm working enough? Like, nobody. I'm never working enough. A lot of this stuff that we're talking about today, it has to deal with just accepting the facts that we're human, we have to do laundry and feed ourselves, and we have to sleep. I mean, you can't compromise those things.
Yeah.
And your art has to take a hit. And it's not even taking a hit. It's like, yes, that's life.
Yeah, please wash your clothes. Please do laundry.
Yes, that's very important. And by the way, everybody, I love all of the suggestions people are making to each other. I can't pull up every single comment, but that's one thing I really value about our audience is that people are supportive. And you'll find that those of you who are asking questions, you're getting a lot of great replies in the chat. So thank you, everybody, for doing that. I like this. This is from George. People always overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in 5 years. Do you think that's true, Jordan?
Oh, yeah. I think that's one of the reasons people get discouraged when it comes to things like the gym, for example. Like, people, I think everyone has done this, including myself, where you just kind of show up and after a week and a half, you don't see results. And you're like, man, what the heck? This is a waste of time. Like, all these people here are on steroids, like we just make assumptions like that. But really, it's the small, consistent effort and being repetitious that create the results. Making a movie doesn't happen in 3 days. Usually, I mean, I'm sure it has been done now with AI and stuff, but but it's certainly not a long movie, and certainly probably not a very good movie. But there's, the best movies in the world take 3, 4, 5, 6 years to make.
Longer sometimes.
Yeah, so sometimes it's just a matter of patience at the end of the day. Patience.
And also being resilient. Did you see that Dev Patel movie, Jordan? It's called Monkey Man.
I've never heard of it.
Okay. Anyway, Deepti and I really like Dev Patel. Although Deepti calls him her husband. I'm not quite there yet.
I had a feeling Deepti was going to come up somehow. I just didn't know where.
I mean, he's a good-looking guy. He's very intense in this film. But basically, I read about it later. I love movie trivia. That's like one of my favorite things to read about. And he said anything that could have gone wrong on this went wrong. I think at one point they had faulty equipment and they lost just hundreds of thousands of footage at one point. And Dev Patel, who was the director and really spearheaded the project, he could have just said, "Oh man, this is not worth my time. Everything's going wrong. I don't want to deal with this." And that's okay, if people really are pushing themselves to an unhealthy degree. But I think he was so passionate about that project that he did not want to walk away, and he stuck it out. And that's hard. A lot of people don't want to stick it out.
Yeah. The most difficult things are usually the most rewarding, I would say.
Yeah.
And, there's no way you're going to pursue this artist life and just be like, oh, this is going to be easy. Like, no one gets, like, if it were easy, if all you had to do was watch one tutorial on how to draw a head or something and you just mastered it, then all those teachers will be out of business. It takes a long time to develop these things. It's muscle memory. It's taste. It's some things that are just kind of hard to even describe or explain. Like, there's a point I noticed as a teacher, and maybe Clara, maybe you noticed this too, where the work is in such an in-between place that you're critiquing that it's neither, like, it's hard to find something good to say, but it's also
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like,
yeah, I do. It's hard.
Where it's like, this is, oh, I mean, you're making good decisions, but also no, and I don't know how to tell you. Like we just cannot find the words. It happens so often.
Well, I think it's just there's a really big difference between work that's pretty good and work that is really outstanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the thing is, they're not that far away from each other, being really good and being outstanding. But I think the outstanding comes from people really just being resilient. Because it's true. Like, if it was that easy to do, everybody would be doing it.
Yeah.
But we know that's not the case. It's not that easy to do. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
And I do think being an artist is sort of like a leap of faith. You have to believe in what you're doing, otherwise you wouldn't do it.
Yep.
But no guarantees.
100%. I mean, especially, I think it's more difficult for a lot of the younger generation, including my generation as well, because we are so used to instant gratification. We're so used to, like, okay, just the simple fact that we don't have to wait for a movie to exit the theater to come home anymore.
You have no idea.
Yeah, well, yeah, totally. Yeah. So I remember hearing stories about like what it was in the 80s, and it's like you wouldn't see a movie for 5 years. You just see in the theater, and you might find a year. You might find it in a store like a year and a half later. Like I remember when I was a kid, there was, especially when Harry Potter came out, the movie was out in like November in theaters, and then in April's when it came out on DVD. That was the longest wait of my 7-year-old life. I was so frustrated, and I remember I had a classmate who somehow got like an early copy of the movie, and he let me take it home and just like watch it. I was like, whoa, this is the coolest thing ever. I get to see it before anyone else. But it's just like 6 months, like it's not that bad. Now it's difficult to go past that for a lot of people.
You don't understand the pain, Jordan, of waiting a whole week to see a new episode of a TV show.
I actually do know the pain of that. They still,
you do?
Yeah, they do have that, but maybe not as good of a show as like the classics. But yeah, I do know that pain. But it is different from like binge watching a show. Like that is also a new thing. Unless you own it on DVD, there is no way you could binge watch Breaking Bad or something. It's just
it wasn't an option. We didn't have the word binge watching. It wasn't the case. Okay, let's see. We have Brazen is asking, can I ask what Alex has moved on to do after leaving Art Prof? Alex I haven't talked to him in a little bit, but he is going on to be a therapist, and he'll be fantastic. He's got that soothing voice. I think he'll be great.
He does have a soothing voice.
Anna is asking, so hard to know where my art fits in the art world. My work is illustrative and a subject matter of macabre, dark belief. But as far as mediums, I know so many, but will my subject matter limit me?
I don't think so. It's interesting because we just talked about maybe 20 minutes ago being a generalist and kind of moving across everything and being equally good at a lot of things. But then there's also a part where it's like you don't want to give up what makes you special. Like Tim Burton is also dark and macabre, but that's what makes him unique. And there's no one who can do it quite like him. There's a whimsical, macabre, dark quality to his work that I haven't seen people be able to replicate, you know? So there is a balance there. And I will assume there's an audience for what it is that you're trying to do. I mean, there's an audience for everything. And all the stuff that people like, all the stuff that people sell on the internet, I won't go into detail, but there's some bizarre things people sell online. And, and I don't even know how these people find the audience for it, but they exist somehow.
They do, yeah. So, they're there.
Yeah, so yeah. Again, I'll leave that to your imagination what those things are.
I was gonna say that actually, Anna, it's better to be hyper specific because you don't have to sell to everybody. You just have to find the people who are really into the thing that you want to sell. And let me tell you, the horror people, they're super into it. And there are these horror movie poster collectors who are extremely excited about that. And yeah, most people on the planet are not horror movie poster artists, collectors, but you just need a couple people who are like super into it. That's all it is. So there is a market for everything. We also have, see, this is great advice. Zayden's asking about Prussian Blue as acrylic, and D. Arthur is saying that Prussian Blue is available in M gram acrylics. Love it that you got, because I didn't know that. We also have a question for Jordan from Tali. If you didn't have a YouTube channel or a family member doesn't want you to be on social media, how would you be able to share your personal art animation?
If I didn't have a YouTube channel or if family member doesn't want to be on social media, I assume this is probably an age limitation. Because for me, I'm a grown man and no one's gonna be able to stop me from doing that. But for some people, they do have that limitation for whatever reason. This first one is a little sneaky. You might be able to make a social media and just not put your face on it. and make it work. That is an option. The other thing though is you could maybe go to like a local what would you call it?
Like a what?
Like a strip. Did I cut out? Am I okay?
I think you cut out for a sec.
Okay. I'll say this, like for people, like you can find a strip mall maybe in a place where people can sell things like I live in LA by the beach. There's always like caricature artists and people who do cool stuff and just be vendors there. Like you could potentially do something like that. And if it's a parental concern, like they can always just, watch over. Like I've seen videos of like 7-year-old girls playing violin on the street, but their parents are nearby and they're like, oh my gosh, this little girl's amazing. They just throw her money. So that could be an option. But I guess it depends on the situation.
For example, I'm extremely protective of my kids and I really don't want them posting anything about themselves. And I said, listen, when you're 18, you can do it. But for now, if you want to have an account, you cannot have your name or any personal information or your face. That's been my thing. But that's usually the main thing is sharing really specific personal information, your name, your age, what you look like. So it could be that maybe your family member doesn't understand that there are options like that. And so that would be a case where you come in and you explain to them, well, no name, no blah, blah, blah. And that might convince them that, oh, okay, that's not as dangerous as I assume, because everybody has a different view of social media. And there's so many things people just don't understand about it. Not their fault. They just don't know. For example, we had a company that wanted us to do some content for them. And after I talked to the person for about 15 minutes, I realized, wow, they do not understand what social media is. And so it was a problem because I couldn't explain, yes, let's make this because it's better. They're like, what about this? I'm like, oh, like you don't know anything. And I found that very difficult to deal with. Oh God, Carla. Showing up to Blockbuster expecting to get the new release and all 50 are empty. Oh my gosh. So scary. Let's also take a look in the Discord. Oh my gosh, Lisa. Lisa's at the museum and
What?
she is listening to the stream. Look at these. What is going on with that ear?
That's wild. It looks like piercings to me.
It does. Okay, so here's Lisa's drawing of these little dudes.
Ooh.
Really like that's a great way to sketch things out. Gio Harding says, my art buddy is fascinated by Mesoamerican art. Yeah, I'm amazed by how they can make such beautiful work with the tools they had available. Oh my God, I would love to go to South America and see all of those museums. That would be amazing. Well, here's a good point from Carla for Tali. Possibly reach out to local business to see if you could hang some pieces, like word of mouth versus internet. Well, let's talk about that a little bit, Jordan, because word of mouth still exists.
Yeah. I mean, YouTube channels kind of grow by the word of mouth most of the time, I think. I mean, it was, you have a successful video, and I mean, yes, the algorithm does take care of a lot, but then there's also people who go like, oh, did you hear about this channel? Like, that's how some of you guys may know the channel Ross Draws. That channel was introduced to me by word of mouth. He has over 1 million subscribers, and it's just like, oh yeah, he's really cool. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that as a method.
I don't know if people know that film Big Fat Greek Wedding. It came out, I think, in the 90s or something, but that was a sleeper hit. It was like a small independent film, but you know something? The people in the Greek community told everyone in their community, and they all went to see it by word of mouth. And it became this huge hit because of the word of mouth of the Greek community. And again, another example where not everyone on the planet had to see that movie to make it successful. You just had to get the Greek community on board. And that was enough to make that film extremely successful. Because, Jordan, I was thinking, certainly I can search online and find things, but I'm very likely to check something out if, say, you tell me about it. This is something about a personal recommendation. You can't beat that.
Yeah, that's true. Like, it's funny you brought up that movie. The only thing I remember about that movie is the Windex. I don't even know what it was. I don't even know the context anymore. I just remember the Windex being
the
a big
Windex,
deal.
yes. That was
Yeah.
great. He used it on mosquito bites.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
It
Yeah. Yeah, but like personal recommendations is huge. I mean, it's like music, right? A lot of people get into music artists because of a personal recommendation. It's not because you just come across it usually. It's very rare that I actually come across a new artist that no one else in my circle knows of. It's very rare.
Me too. For example, tell us in the chat, have any of you told somebody in real life about us? I suspect probably at least a few of you. So Alexander says, we put a stop to our kids online because we told them what they were allowed into, and they kept getting into other things and even sneaking their tablets into their closets. Oh man, those are some sneaky kids that you are raising, Alexander. We also have, I love that so many of you are here with us. It's just wonderful to be together like this. So Val says, I adore the sculptures from indigenous cultures of North and South America. Yeah, and that's artwork that just doesn't get visibility. And it's so frustrating because a lot of it is just as good, if not better, than a lot of the stuff that does get high visibility.
Yeah, that's the way of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, so Brazen and Carla and Val have all told people about us in real life. I think that's really valuable. Also, does everybody notice that when you can ask somebody, you don't have to spend 30 hours online trying to find the freaking answer? Because I suppose I could do that, but it's just so much faster to ask somebody, which is, again, I mean, I'm biased, but that's why our Discord is fantastic. You just come in, you just ask. Boom, there's the question. There's the answer. There's the answer. And that's so valuable because, Jordan, I think you've been there where you're like, I need the answer to this one thing. I can't find it.
Yeah, that happens often. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I even use ChatGPT to find answers for me. It's kind of fun. But
Whatever works.
yeah, it's just sometimes you just need that quick answer.
Well, so that's why, again, I think learning is better in a group because you help each other. You may not have time to look for where Prussian Blue exists, but somebody in the chat just knew. Take advantage of that, everybody. It's very efficient because I recently, as you all know, I was trying to learn solvent-free oils, and I had a couple people in the Discord who were like, yep, buy this, this, and this is that. And I could have spent 30 hours looking for something saying, oh, is this right? But this person says this, and I don't know. I find that so frustrating. Ha! Butter says, my friends are probably tired of hearing me talk about art prof. Well, we are amazing, I think.
Tell them get used to it.
Some of you may have heard about our art club. This also occurs at the Discord, but this is a really fun place because it's a much smaller group than the main areas, which is amazing. But let me tell you, when you have 13,000 members, it's a lot harder to get to know people. And this is also a place you can get critiques from me. I have been doing critiques on audio. You also get open studio sessions, and you can get critiques on all kinds of pieces that you would like a professional opinion on, because we do have the public critique channels, but I don't critique in there. And you do have to post 3 comments before you're allowed to post. Now, in Art Club, you don't have to do that. You can just post anytime you want. We do have some limits in terms of how often you can get a critique from me. For example, you can't ask me for a critique once every 15 hours, but you can post there and get that feedback and not have to do the extra work. Tracy says, mention art prof to my adult kids. I guess I got a bit excited, rambled on, so their eyes just glazed over. What, you too, Tracy? It's basically every single thing I say to my kids. Tell us in the comments, what is your method for searching for things online? Do you find yourself trying to just look at every website possible? Or do you start slow and absorb it a bit by bit? Because, Jordan, I hate looking for information online. It's just, there's so much you have to wade through. I just find it exhausting. Do you?
Yeah, it can be annoying. I mean, is this like an image reference you're talking about,
Just
or just
anything I'm looking for online just takes forever to find?
Yeah, I think it just depends on the subject matter. Honestly, YouTube I think is a great resource. Like, especially because if I don't know how to do something, there's usually a YouTube video on how to do it. Like, like when I moved into my place, I had these more advanced appliances. I did not know how to use my microwave. Like, I kid you not. Like, there was so
Really?
many. Yeah. like, because there's all these different things on it. I was like, what the heck is this? I had to figure out how to do it on YouTube. And apparently I'm not the only one, because there's like 1 million views on that video. So
Really?
yeah.
There was one time I was in Boston and I had this rental car. And so I'm going to fill it up with gas. You know how in cars there's like a little button to open the gas kit?
Uh-huh.
I could not find the gas kit. I spent probably 15 minutes. And I said, okay, I'm going to look it up on YouTube. Maybe there's something that tells me where it is. And I couldn't find it. I'm like, what is this? You know something? It had a different gas kit that had no button, and you just had to press the gas kit and it would pop open. That was the most annoying thing I ever searched for. I couldn't believe it. I mean, maybe I'm just dumb, but like, oh my God, that was super annoying to not find the thing that you're looking for.
Yeah, I've done stuff like that before. One time I was dropping a friend off at the airport, they drove to the airport, but I was going to drive their car back, and it was just me in the car, and they turned the emergency brake on. I didn't know, and I couldn't find it because it wasn't in the usual place. It was like underneath the steering wheel, and I was like, "Where the heck is it?" And I just keep hearing, like, I see the emergency like light on, like a brake is on. You're not supposed to be driving like that. I'm like, what the heck is that? I was like, what am I going to do? I'm going to just sleep in the airport, I guess, in the parking lot. So, yeah.
Sheesh.
Yeah.
Nutty.
Yeah, I do not know why they turn on the emergency brake instead of just parking in, but that's whatever. That's beside the point.
That's why I don't like rental cars. There's always something that I can't figure out.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
We have a comment here from Tally. I'd love to share on Discord. It's just I don't want to be annoying when I'm sharing my work. That stems from high school bullying. Well, I'm so sorry you went through that. But Tally, I can tell you that that's one of the reasons why we do have limits. So, for example, in show and tell, you're allowed to share 1 photo per day. So therefore, if you break the rules and you post 15 images, a moderator will come in and say, please don't do that. And that's pretty much it. People will not bother you about it. And if they do, we kick them out really fast. People who are jerks do not last long in our Discord because we've got a fantastic mod team. So nobody here should worry about that. But again, as I mentioned before, we also have Art Club where we do not have those types of limitations because people pay for membership. We are very specific about structuring the Discord in a way where people cannot be annoying because of the rules. And if they are, it's probably because they're breaking a rule or being a jerk. Alexander says, I showed my mom the reference pages on the site, but she's not computer savvy, so she will just ask when she needs something online. Lulu Bell says, agree. I usually go to YouTube responses first. I also search every time I start my snowblower or weed whacker. Jordan, I have found that YouTube is better now than Google. Have you guys noticed that if you go to Google, okay, it's AI at the top, 5 sponsored posts, something about trending, and the real search results are like at the very bottom. I'm like, what is this AI at the very top when we know that AI is not always right?
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. It's the hot new thing. I'm just gonna chalk it up to that. It's really annoying though.
But see, with YouTube, you don't have that. You just get the result.
Yeah, and you know what I also like about what YouTube is doing now? They have this new feature where if you want to change your algorithm, sometimes you can do that.
Oh,
where
you
it's like
can?
new to you. Yeah. So you can just hit
Oh,
new to you and it'll show you videos that are like not even so much tangentially related. Like they might have an art thing in there, but it refreshes the algorithm because there's been so many times where I'm like, I'm so tired of seeing these exact same videos of these
yeah.
things in the same talking points. Like I want to learn something, but I don't know what that is. So YouTube, I think, has actually answered that question.
Wow.
Pretty awesome.
Sometimes I confess I actually won't watch a video because I'm like, I don't want this baking video to pop up everywhere. And all of a sudden, all I see are baking videos.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens. I understand that.
We also have George says, did you think to check the owner's manual? No, I did not.
I did actually, and I still couldn't figure
You
it
still couldn't
out.
figure it out.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, I was at the airport, and like in my situation, I was at the airport, and if you're in like San Francisco or LA in a crowded airport, they really stress you out about getting out of the way as quickly as possible. So
Yeah.
for me to flip through a 200-page book, and like there have been times where people get pulled over in moments like that.
What?
So I was too freaked out to even like try and go through it. I ended up calling the person, and they answered finally. But yeah, it was. Yeah, sometimes it's not always the most convenient timing.
Ugh. Courtney says, I was learning that Google is reposting what folks are searching for. So users are basically never leaving Google, but getting it from the search engine, not the original creators. That's the thing about all of these platforms is their goal ultimately is to get you to stay on their platform. Sometimes that can work in your favor because for YouTube, we put all kinds of links to our other videos because we want people to look at those other videos. In the beginning, we used to just put website links, but I realized in retrospect that was not helping us because YouTube doesn't like it when you leave. They want you to just stay there forever. We also have Butter, who says, there have been days lately when YouTube won't let me see my playlists, and it's so frustrating because I have so much info saved in there. Oh my God, like half my day is trying to find things. Do you ever have days, Jordan, where you're like, where's that file? And then it's like a half an hour, and then you start organizing your files, and then it becomes this fruitless, endless pursuit.
Yes, I have had many of those days. I think I ended up spending a whole afternoon organizing what was on my external drive versus my desktop versus my Dropbox. It was a lot. And I lost a day of productivity that way, unfortunately.
I mean, when I've been traveling and shooting shorts, one of the things I do at the end of the day of shooting is I just sit and organize. And it usually takes me about an hour and a half to put things in the right Google Drive folder and free up the storage on my phone. It's just, oh, it never ends. By the way, I could use some suggestions, everybody, because you guys are really good at giving me great advice. In terms of our on-site content, when we go to a museum or whatever, which videos have you liked the most? Because the thing about the on-site content, it's some of my favorite stuff to shoot, but whenever I go to, say, New York City or something like that, it's hard to pick where to go because there's just so many places. So do people like the museum visits, the studio visits, or just tell me, what is it, the stuff that you enjoy about that content? Because I think what we are going to do this month is start to do way more art alongs because I think people were missing those. And I haven't thought it through yet, but I'd like to try some art marathons that are just 3 days because I can't do a week marathon more than once a year, I believe. But this is where I think it was Nani who was asking about how to teach online. So much of it is asking for feedback from your audience because your audience knows better than you what to do. Especially with selling, if you want to sell stuff, you just have to put things out there and you find out, oh, people really like this thing. I'll do more of that. Or, oh, this was a bomb. I'm going to discontinue that. And you've all seen us do that here where we have done something and then changed our minds. And I think, Jordan, there's a certain flexibility you have to have as a creative to say, that didn't work. Let me try something else, which I know people don't like. It feels discouraging, but it's very important.
Yeah, I think being a creative and knowing when to shift or change your mind is really good. I mean, there are certain times. I mean, if you think about TV shows and stuff, there are certain times where characters were almost like removed from the show entirely, or it was meant to be, or like Steve Urkel, for example. Steve Urkel, for those of you guys who know the show Family Matters back in the 80s and 90s, he was meant to be a one-time guest star in the first season.
Oh.
And he became so popular among fans that they just brought him back and brought him back. And eventually he pretty much became the face of the show.
Yeah, he did.
Like that, like people refer to it as the Urkel show, but he really was, he started out as a guest star. And so you never know. You never know.
Well, I have to give another Walking Dead reference. Ha! Norman Reedus, who plays Daryl Dixon in The Walking Dead, they liked his audition so much that they wrote a role for him. Because The Walking Dead is based on comics, but there's no Daryl Dixon character in the comics. But they took that creative liberty because they saw how great he was as an actor, and he's one of everybody's favorite characters in the whole show. And that's where, okay, as much as you planned, I also think it's well worth stumbling on something and saying, I'm just going to try it.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the fun in art is when you stumble across something. I mean, yeah, there's all these styles are created that way. Entire artistic styles is usually a result of messing around with stuff and just seeing what happens.
And it's not always easy. A lot of us are worried, oh, it won't be worth my time, or what if I mess up? But just give it a shot. And if it's really that truly bad, you can just not do it.
Yeah. Easy solutions.
Yes. See how easy it is being a creative? We have a question, and a reminder to everybody, if you have a question, please write question in caps. Easier for me to see your question. Anna says, what video editing apps for Reels do you recommend? I am obsessed with Video Leap. I'm like a walking Video Leap advertisement. I find it extremely user-friendly. There is a free version, and then there is the paid version. I use the paid version, but if you're doing something that's super simple, I mean, some of our stuff is pretty complicated, so for us, we need it, but some people may not. But you know something? I feel bad for the people who use CapCut, because if TikTok goes away, they're losing CapCut. And that's one of the reasons, if you do editing, I do not recommend learning it within the app. Because let's say Instagram dies and you're used to editing in Instagram, that's not good. So if you have an outside editing app, I do think that's an advantage. I mean, what do you use for editing, Jordan?
I use the same thing you do because you told us, and I just got used to it. I don't use it for long form videos. For a long form video, I'll use either Final Cut Pro or Camtasia, depending on how I feel, because they both have their pros and cons. And Final Cut Pro is a massive software, but I haven't figured out how to use everything. So sometimes I'll export the video and put it in Camtasia just to make my life a little easier. But as soon as I figure out how to use it, I'll probably switch full time to the Final Cut Pro.
Well, so for Reels, I do think it's better to edit on your phone. The only time I use Premiere now is when I'm doing a really long, involved video that would just take too long. And also, you have to be careful if the files get too big on your phone. That can really be a problem in terms of uploading them, because I filmed something on my phone the other day and I made the mistake of filming a 15-minute clip, and it became horrible to upload and stuff. So I ended up just shooting 2-minute clips at a time, and that made it way better. So that's another thing, is a lot of these places, it just takes time to figure out the workflow and what's your need. And that's, again, where the experimentation is extremely important, being willing to do that. All right. Butter is asking, speaking of AI, do you have any updates on Clara? Well, there was that big blitz where there was one weekend everybody went, oh my God, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. Oh my God, let's switch to Clara. Do you still use it, Jordan?
Well, I've had some life things happen, so I haven't been thinking about social media. But I haven't seen a massive boom. I don't think I've seen the massive boom continue. A lot of people are still on Instagram, but I think so. The reason Clara was really a big thing was because it had this glaze it has glaze technology, which prevents it from being scraped by generative AI software. But the thing is, generative AI is becoming so widespread. It's almost I'll be honest, it's impossible to beat. And a lot of people are trying to figure out how they're going to overcome that. I mean, if you are that concerned with your stuff being scraped, then definitely use Clara. I'm not even saying don't use it even if you don't care about AI and stuff like that, but that was the big selling point. And I think once Meta / Instagram decided, oh, we're going to put all this stuff on, we're going to scrape all our stuff for AI purposes, and then like all these companies are starting to go like, hey, we're going to use your stuff for AI. If you want the job, then you have to know that's the situation. So it's an unfortunate situation, but that's kind of how it is right now. So
it's the reality.
Yeah, the reality of it all.
We also have okay. Court D says, I like it when you take us to places we would not be allowed to go. Yeah, I have wormed my way into a couple cool places, and I have some that are coming up that I think you guys are going to like a lot.
Mystery.
Layla says, I want to say thank you for your videos. As an art student, I find them super helpful, especially when it comes to apply to where I'm going next. Well, I'm so glad to hear that. And by the way, it's time, lurkers, to say hello. Just say hello. You don't have to say anything else, because I love hearing from you guys. I love seeing different names. I mean, I love you guys all. Those of you who have been with us for many years at this point, of course, but it's so fun to meet the new people watching. So say hello, lurkers. Brandon is asking, do you have any tips for art studies? I have a hard time distinguishing between studying an artist and just copying. Let me ask you a question and you can follow up, Brandon. So are you talking about a master copy where you say take a Rembrandt painting and copy it so you can study his technique? If you can clarify a little bit more, we'll come back to you. Here's a comment. Well, actually, let me share T. Soto's comment. I am a caregiver to 2 elderly adults, and I also work a 9-to-5 job. I wish I could spend more time with my artwork. Oh, that's like 5 full-time jobs, T. Soto. I mean, good for you for waking up in the morning. That's so much to deal with. And we also have Brazen, who says, I spent years caring for my mom before she passed. It is so important to try to steal moments for self-care. Art, a long shower, whatever builds you up. I spent a long time recovering myself. Oh, let's get into the Discord, because I believe there is some stuff going on in there. we do have, oh, I have to reload this. Hang on a sec. Oh, did my internet just die? Oh, it's my stupid headphone. Hang on a sec. Connection is annoying. Okay, let's go into art-alongs. Here's some stuff from LIEU'S Beatty. Still working on watercolor portraits, improving my skills. Younger image of one of my granddaughters. Looks more like her current 12-year-old face. One last week was one of my favorites. Oh, this is so great to see your progress. Oh my God, is that a rat? That's on top. That is hilarious. I am so into that. Wow. Thank you for sharing. Remember, everybody, we're sharing in the Art-alongs channel, and it's underneath live streams. Oh, Butter says, I think I need to get some pan pastels. Loving the way I can push and pull the form with the powder. You know what would be really cool? Butter, I don't know if you have an eraser, but I think going in here with an eraser would get you some really, really nice highlights. All right, we do have... Tolly says, can you make more videos of artists you haven't heard of, particularly from the Caribbean? I mean, I would like to be able to do everything, but a lot of it has to do with finding people, but also them agreeing to be on camera. That's actually the biggest hurdle, is that sometimes I'll contact an artist and say, oh, I really want to come film, and they'll just say no because they don't want to be on camera. So it depends on that. It also depends on where I am. I mean, I wish I had the money to go to the Caribbean and interview all the artists there, but that also gets very expensive. So yes, I would love to, but either I need a gigantic pile of cash, or yeah, that's pretty much what I need. I need a giant pile of cash. Because the thing is, if I want to interview people in the Caribbean, it's harder to find them in the US. But let's say I took a trip to the Caribbean, that would not be difficult because everybody who's there, well, most of the people who are there probably are from there. Oh, we've got some lurkers. Alina, Gina, Gail, Ka, Christian.
Oh, snap. Christian's one of my students.
Oh, really? Oh, that's so fun.
What's up, man? Happy New Year.
Nice. Val is asking, building off Brandon's question, do you have any tips on studying from anatomy books, such as the Morpho books? Have you heard of those, Jordan?
No, but I do have an idea for how to study, although this is going to be slightly different. Here, I'll show you guys something real quick. So oh, that's not the one that I wanted to show. Hold on. So a couple of months ago, I was doing these studies for an artist named Sean Galloway. And what I did is I looked at his style, and then I looked at photographs of actual people. And I tried to analyze how the artist would create this character in his style. And I did it, I think 100 times for this set. So if you're trying to study for a specific style, whether it's painting style or anything, figure out how they do it by breaking it down in terms of like, find a photo of their work and then find something in real life and then try and interpret the real life photo with their style. It takes a while to get, but after you do it so many times, it starts to become second nature. So that to me is the fastest way to figure that out personally.
The anatomy book that I really like is extremely bare bones. I've never heard of the Morpho books before, but I'll be honest, a lot of the anatomy books I see are way too complicated. And a lot of them have these like super weird, fake, fancy images that I find extremely unnatural looking.
What's a fake fancy image?
You know, images that are clearly photoshopped and are very shiny. I've seen some reference photos where it looks like they put oil on the model to make that. It looks like a bodybuilder. I've seen stuff like that. but also just dumb things like people holding a plastic sword, or I don't know. Some of them are really tasteless, in my opinion. So I like Artistic Anatomy by Dr. Paul Richet because it's extremely simple. It's just, okay, muscle, bone. It doesn't give you any of that extraneous stuff, which in my opinion makes things too complicated. Now, anatomy can be complicated, but I don't think it has to be. And Jordan, have you seen people who do anatomy and they just make it so much harder than it needs to be?
Yeah. I think especially for what I do, I mean, when it comes to anatomy, I think there's two types. You have the art there's the anatomy that's more for like medical purposes, where you have to know every little vein and muscle and bone and all that stuff. And then there's the more artistic stuff, which really for me is like the stuff that you only see. Like all the extensors, like you don't really see all the extensors on the skin, no matter how buff you are. So I kind of just ignore it. I just kind of group it together. Most of the time, you don't see the three individual quad muscles, for example. Like so it really just depends on stuff like that. But yeah, you can make it a lot simpler if you want to, in my opinion.
I really think for anatomy, if you have a great torso, the other stuff almost doesn't matter. Great torso, great gesture, that overrides the freaking vastus lateralis. You're okay. I mean, I like the vastus lateralis, but in the scheme of things, it's not really that important.
Yeah.
We have a question from Shannon. Any recommendations for successful artists that draw and paint animals, not just furry artists, please? I could use some role models and proof that I can be a full-time animal artist. Being an animal artist, I think you need to look at the context, because there is an animal artist, and of course I can't remember his name. There's an article about him in the New Yorker. If you look up New Yorker artist leopard, you might find it. Anyway, there's also people like James Gurney, who is famous for his Dinotopia images, does wonderful animals. But being a fine artist who does animals and shows in galleries, very different than somebody who does illustrated books. So a lot of it is figuring out what part of the art world you want to be in. Okay, so Brandon's following up. I want to try to understand how the artist does the things they do and why. Let me go back to the initial question. Tips for art studies. Well, I mean, they're sort of the same thing. I mean, Jordan, isn't there some saying about imitation is where you begin? Something like that?
I've heard imitation is the greatest form of flattery. I've heard that.
No, it's somebody help me out here. It's something about how you have to start by copying. I mean, the example I would give is that's definitely what I did as a teacher. I mean, when I first started as a teacher, I really felt like I was just copying my professors. But eventually I found my voice. It took a long time. But a master copy, the purpose is not to get, the perfect Rembrandt painting. It's just about looking at his painting and trying to figure out, how did he paint this? As long as you've accomplished that, who really cares if the painting looks exactly like it? Because that's not the objective. The objective is to really break down his technique. We also have a question. Gled is asking, selling art online via art websites, whatever. I don't want to disclose my mailing address on the package. Can the delivery people keep my address confidential? Depends on what you use, but usually not, I would guess. What I do is I have a P.O. box, and that way I just know that I will always have that as an option. And I do recommend, like, if you want to really sell long term, you will need that, because people may need to send you a return, and you don't want to send your home address as well. Thank you so much, Alina, for the super sticker. Anytime you can send us anything, we are so incredibly grateful for that. We still need your support. We also... I love that you guys are just having a party in the chat. I can't even keep up. Good point from Val. I think copying can be a form of study itself. However, you must be conscious of what you're copying. Studies like that are incredibly helpful. I did lots of Velázquez master studies when I was in school. And Jordan, I'm sure you've done plenty of that in your field.
Oh yeah. I mean, the things I just showed you were basically master copies. I looked at his books and I looked at photos and just combined them. And for me, I just find it the most helpful because it when you're copying purely without analyzing, you know, you're just drawing lines. It's sort of like reading a book without absorbing the information. So it helps me to stimulate my mind by doing things like that.
We also have a suggestion. Tolly says, I enjoy the videos of unusual places to shop art supplies. Can you do more places? Yes, I absolutely can. But again, like finding artists and studio visits, it all depends on if they're willing to do it. Because sometimes I approach places and they're like, no. I'm like, why would you turn this down? I don't understand why people don't see the value of a big YouTube channel sending everybody to your shop. And I know we have. People have told me that. Oh, here it is. Okay. Grell Deck says, imitation is how you begin. It's not specifically related to art, but includes it. It's about how everyone learns by copying what others do, whether in a classroom or on the job. T. Soto is asking, how often do you stream? We stream Tuesdays at this time, 12 p.m. Eastern, and we also stream on Friday evenings. I may change it, or maybe I already did, to make it earlier because I want to start doing art-alongs on Friday nights. I was doing them at 10 p.m. before Eastern, but that was a discussion. Paint-along, I think I need to start sooner so I don't fall asleep. Alexander's asking, growing up without the internet and being very rural, I had very little artistic exposure. I learned purely by drawing things I could see. Do you think this was a hindrance or a boon?
I mean, if you learn to draw, I mean, that's great. I mean, I don't see how that would be a hindrance at all. I mean, you could get this. I mean, the internet is a great tool, but it's not the end all be all. You could learn the same information in books or, you know, going to an art class. And quite honestly, I mean, you clearly have access to the internet now. So it almost, in my mind, I don't even know if it matters as much anymore because now you can shift and you can grow and learn. So, you know, I guess it's really just how you look at it.
I do have to say the old fart in me does feel a little bummed that most people will not draw from life because images are so readily available. I mean, do you guys remember getting magazines and cutting out the picture of your crush? My crush was Robert Sean Leonard in Dead Poet Society. I was obsessed with him in high school. And I remember going up and looking up old magazines so I could find pictures of him. But one of the comments that people made, I have a video about my old sketchbooks, and I go through all the ones from when, I mean, in some cases I was like 5. I have all these sketchbooks. And one of the comments that people made was, oh my God, you drew from life so much. You didn't really draw from photographs that much. Part of it is the convenience thing. But in some ways, I sort of wish it was the case because, Jordan, I oftentimes have to put a lot of energy into convincing people to draw from life.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to a lot of us are lazy. You know,
afraid.
I mean, yeah, okay, maybe afraid, but I guess I've never really thought of it that way about being afraid. It's always like I just don't feel like going out and finding a place. But people can literally, I've seen so many sketches of people just drawing what's in front of them.
Yeah.
Like literally they'll have their sketchbook in the drawing with their hand, and then they'll just draw the environment around them.
Yeah. I mean, I do have a skeleton right in front of me. That's pretty handy. Great comment from Dandy. Realized recently how profound it is to sketch and draw from life. There are many circumstances where drawing from life makes things much easier. For example, when you're doing a portrait and there's shadow on the portrait, in a photo, that might look very flat. I mean, some shadows in photos, it just looks like this big area of gray. But if I look at somebody in person, you can see the colors. They're clear as day. Now, in a photo, you're not going to have that. And that's what people don't see, is that there's so many things that are easier and better in drawing from life that are tougher in a photo reference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Gina says, I love drawing from life, especially in a classroom. Tolly's asking, is it better to draw from a sculpture or from life if you can afford it? Just use life. Life is free. I think life is the way to go. Remember, everybody, we are doing registration for upcoming workshops. And by the way, Jordan is teaching a creature design workshop. We're very excited because Jordan knows how to do so many things I have no idea how to do. But we also have workshops like pets and animals, cloud landscapes, how to loosen up, and also experimental printmaking. Thank you, everybody, so much for hanging out with us. And by the way, no Discord live chat because we were doing it during the stream. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye.